Kaplan, the Managing Director of Kaplan Equity Analysts, joins us now in studio to give us the review of the South African Information and Communication Technology sector, otherwise known as ICT. Ernest, good to have you as always. Maybe let's start with a review of 2014 and some surprise winners when it comes to investments there.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's interesting every year. I don't know why you pick December as the period, I guess, just because that's the calendar year. But you kind of look back and you say, well, which shares did very well and which shares didn't do well? And there's certainly some surprises. For example, in the last year, we saw Mustek doing much better than rival Pinnacle. That in previous years, Pinnacle had done extremely well. It rocketed ahead and always was the outperformer in that sort of hardware side of the game. So the surprise was the other way around this year. And then you've obviously got companies like EOH that did very well and continues to do so.
But was it a surprise? Pinnacle hit all kinds of reputational issues.
You know, Alec, it was a surprise in that beginning of last year, or before all those reputational issues started, I would not have said that they would have encountered those. So from that perspective was a surprise. Certainly wasn't a surprise that once they hit those issues, the share price got hit quite hard and hasn't quite recovered. So in fact, it's hardly recovered.
Has not recovered at all.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, the guys at 361 are real sharp, and you know that. Yeah. And their tip for the year is Pinnacle. That's the one they've put a lot of their effort and clearly their shareholders' funds into. I know you were a big investor there too. With the share price at 12 Rand versus the 24 that it started last year at, is it exciting opportunity still? Yes,
I do think so, and I'll second the view of 361. I think the main reason is that it's reasonably cheap for what it is, and provided there aren't any further scandals, which I don't believe there will be, I think the share will recover quite nicely. Perhaps won't shoot up to the 20 level in a hurry, but over the course of the next year, as earnings come through, which we hope they will, I think that share will do very nicely. So I do think it's a good bet.
Is the scandal behind them? Is it been settled, or are there anything? Is there anything overhanging it?
It's officially fully behind them. Yeah.
Exactly. EOH, though, is one of those that you mentioned is a continual good performer. What's the secret behind that company?
You know, I think EOH is an exceptionally well-run company with exceptionally good management, and I think that's really the key behind it. It is a people business after all, and they've managed to combine good growth in the business organically with very good acquisitions in certain niche areas, and they've done that repetitively for many years.
And it reminds me of Dimension Data. Here's a story of a share that 2 years ago was sitting at 30 Rand, now it's sitting at nearly 120 Rand, and the market says that doesn't matter, gravity doesn't affect it. You remember the Data story? It was a similar thing, lots of acquisitions, enhancing, and they fell off the bus. Why weren't these guys?
Alec, you're right. I mean, in a way you're right, but I wasn't around in the format I am in now when Data was going through that period. I just started, so I don't have as much detailed insight as to what they did and how it differs from EOH. But what I will put forward is that I think Data, one or two of those acquisitions, first of all, a lot of those acquisitions were international,
towards the end,
and they were big. And quite a few of them, I think, were actually unprofitable businesses, or were businesses that they had grossly overpaid for. And I think in the case of EOH, they make very smart acquisitions in that they don't overpay, and they prefer to partner with the business they're buying and give EOH shares as a portion of the payment. So then those people want to do well. And I know it sounds cliche, but it really is a win-win situation for a lot of those businesses.
They bought small chunks in companies, little bits, then they grew that, then they bought a bit more, and then they took them out. They ran at 30% a year for many years. But at some point in time, you can't do that indefinitely. The world is not made that way. Or is it in the case of EOH?
I don't think so. I mean, my sort of caution on EOH generally, and I am a small shareholder, is I don't think the next few years are going to be anywhere as easy as the last few. The one argument says they're bigger and stronger, so it's easier for them now to attract new potential targets and move into new markets. But on the other hand, as we all know, as a company approaches 10 billion in revenue, it becomes more difficult to add on another 30% every year. But even if the growth subsides and slows down to a reasonable rate, as long as it's something above 10%, I guess, it's still done incredibly well. I don't think, though, they'll do as well the next few years.
Maybe if we contrast EOH sterling performance with that of Gijima, which clearly needs a lot of assistance from all angles, something just needs to change there.
Yeah, I mean, Gijima's a company which I've followed for a number of years, and the recent news is that the rights offer that chairman of Guma and chairman of Gijima, Robert Gumede, has actually taken up most of the shares.
Again.
Yeah.
Remember, he put 75 million in it at 75 cents, or 80 million in at 75 cents. And it was a negative 10 bagger last year.
Yeah, so he's actually wanted to raise another 100 million, and I'm not sure of the exact figures, but it wasn't subscribed very well from other shareholders. So
surprise.
His Guma group will rocket in their shareholding from the 40s or somewhere thereabouts, potentially north of 75. So I think it gives him an outright majority in that company. And it says to me two things. One is it says to me that he is very persistent about trying to get things right. And number two, he's determined to get it right, so much so that he'll put his own money into it.
But he did. At the beginning of last year, he put in 75 million. And he didn't get it right. It went to 1/10 of the share price. Now, what tells you that he's able to do things differently this time?
Nothing really, Alec, but if I look at the results, they were improved since that last rights offer. So they're not great, but things are slowly getting less worse or slightly better. And I think the team that he's putting in place is starting to have an effect. Whether or not this 100 million is enough to see them through whatever turnaround they want to do is another question. But it's clear that Robert Gumede is determined to get it right. And
3 years ago, 13 rand a share. Today, 8 cents.
Yeah.
Hi, caramba. You really are taking a bet. Take the three of them together. EOH, you're saying, bit of a concern. They've quadrupled in the last 3 years. For them to carry on from here is not going to be that easy, but it's a good company. Pinnacle halved in price in the last year, and Gijima, well, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's fractional from where they were 3 years ago. Would you then be putting your... You seem to like Gijima, but...
No. I'm not implying that I would invest in Gijima right now, because I do think the risks are too high. I just think, as an outsider, I'm not a shareholder. As an outsider, I would just applaud Mr. Gumede for what he's trying to do, and hope that for the sake of the people and some of the projects that he's doing, because they're doing some seriously big projects still for corporate South Africa. So I'm just hopeful that something good can come of it. It's not easy to call, and I certainly don't think anyone should be rushing out to buy shares in that company right now.
84 million rand market capitalization, and it does a turnover of 1.5 billion. So if anybody can just get a slight improvement in the margins, and perhaps Robert's the one who can do it, well, good luck to him. I guess he's got big kahunas, and sometimes that needs to be rewarded.
Sure, I agree with that.
But you'd be going with Pinnacle?
Oh yes, I'd be sticking with Pinnacle, and being a little bit cautious on EOH, watching for potentially a slowdown. I'm just worried, Alec, on EOH for the purpose of your show, is that the rating is quite high. So if they were to slow down to a respectable, say, 15% growth at some point, which is very possible, I'm not quite sure what would happen to that PE rating.
2 words for you: Dimension Data. That was Irnest Kaplan, the Managing Director of Kaplan Equity Analysts.